Intelligence 360. We've got Matt Carlton here. He's got an amazing presentation for you, and we're super excited to have you here today. We hope you're just as excited to see us. But before I get into too much depth, Matt, take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope everyone can hear me all right. I'm Matt Carlton. I'm a product manager in the customer intelligence practice here at SAS. I'm mostly focused on AI and analytics. I'm here today to talk about a new solution or module for CI360 that we're very excited about called Marketing AI. I wanted to start with this quote. Funny enough, this quote was presented in Orlando about 15 years ago, less than a mile away from where we're meeting today. And it's all about information being the oil of the 21st century that makes analytics a combustion engine. And I think this quote really still holds true today. So over the past year, as we've been working on Marketing AI, and the shortest description that I can give into what we're building is we're trying to build an assembly line for your analytics. So we think marketing organizations, no matter how many data scientists you have, there's always a need to be doing more with AI and analytics. And we really want to help accelerate and scale AI in your organization. To take a quick step back, just to orient you on where we are within the portfolio, Marketing AI is a standalone module, but it also has very nice integrations with the rest of Customer Intelligence 360, and we'll see that throughout the demo today. So I wanted, before we hop into the software, to just take a couple of minutes and introduce Marketing AI and talk a little bit about what I think we're doing differently. I really think we can boil it down into 4 ways that we can help marketing organizations scale their AI and analytical capabilities, and we start by being use case driven. So we think about, the number of marketers out there in the world, the number of data scientists, data analysts, and we've talked to a lot of customers about this over the last year, is we often find that data science resources are a bottleneck to doing more with analytics and AI. And I know there are certainly data scientists in the room. This is not meant to be a knock on data scientists, but the reality is that marketing organizations often don't have enough for what they want to accomplish. And so that's why from the gate, we're building a solution that is use case driven for marketers. We recognize that marketers don't think in terms of algorithms when they're talking about analytics, and they think more in terms of use cases. So that's why from the ground up, we've developed this solution to be use case driven. I want to briefly introduce the concept of recipe templates, and as we get into the software, you'll see these in action. But recipe templates are provided out of the box in Marketing AI, and they address and solve for a particular use case. This could be likelihood to purchase, cross-sell, upsell, product recommendation engines, many different things. And of course, like recipes, they have ingredients, right? So it's the data that you need to build a model, to train a model for your use case. It's how we prepare that data so that it's useful for modeling, feature engineering, things like that. It's also what are the applicable algorithms and machine learning pipelines that we want to use? How do we actually score, run inference on these models, and of course, how we activate them. So in Marketing AI, a recipe template guides you through the end-to-end experience from raw data to an activated model in your campaigns for a particular use case. And we'll get to see this in action. The second point is we want marketers to be self-service in doing analytics. And if we look at the analytical lifecycle, there's a lot of steps: data preparation, model training, review, model activation, and of course, model governance or model monitoring. And what we've done throughout this solution is we put in a ton of accelerators and automations. We're using things like generative AI to empower marketers to really be self-service in doing analytics. The third point I want to quickly touch on is being able to deploy anywhere. So part of the philosophy of CI360 is we are a software as a service solution, but we also recognize that a lot of customers don't want to shift all of their data into the cloud. So we're not going to ask you to move your data into a cloud environment to do analytics. We'll run analytics where your data lives. And this is a part of a larger initiative within CI360 to create an extension of the software and serve as a service experience that we've been providing for our customers. So over the next couple years, we're rolling out what we're calling local agents as a service, and Marketing AI will be a part of this. And so the benefit of this is you get this great software as a service experience. You're able to go into there, do your design time, set up your recipes, your use cases, your projects. But when it's time to actually run the data preparation, run your analytical pipelines, this will all happen where your data lives. So you don't need to worry about moving it into our cloud. The fourth point is streamlining data preparation. And if any of you were in the main stage presentation earlier, Kate Parker actually talked about this a bit. But there's this old tale that if you want to do an analytical project, you're probably going to spend roughly 80% of your time doing data preparation, and only 20% will be spent doing actual modeling. And what's interesting is we look in the vendor space at other marketing, analytics, and AI solutions out there. They focus a lot on the 20% and not as much on the 80%. So we've taken it as a big challenge upon ourselves to really focus on how can we help customers accelerate data preparation. And because we only have limited time for this demo, I just want to show you a couple of the highlights of this, and we can discuss it more as well. But when we do data preparation, we start with a use case. We start with a recipe template. So you tell us what your objective is. I want to predict who's likely to churn. I want to build a product recommendation engine, whatever analytical or AI use case you have. And once you select your recipe type, you're then brought into this guided interface where you see these very clear steps of what you need to do. We start with an objective where you tell us a little bit more about your use case, make some basic selections, and we're able to use this to help guide you through the data preparation experience downstream. If we move on, the next step is pulling in your data sources. Again, we really don't care where your data comes from. You can register them as data sources and use what's relevant for a given use case. And we help guide you through what the appropriate data is. So as a very basic example, if we wanted to predict customer churn, you might bring in your customers table, your activity table, and your transactions table to use for modeling. And the next step, of course, we need to join this data together so that it's suitable for modeling. And we help guide you through this process and make it very simple. So what we're doing here is creating a single view on the customer table, for example, so that we can start to model and predict customer churn behavior. The next step I think is very interesting, and this is kind of feature engineering. So out of the box, we provide lots of automatic aggregations and data transformations that are applicable to the use case. And so if you are, let's say, not a data scientist, not as familiar with what feature engineering looks like, you can just accept our automatic recommendations, and what we'll do is find the signals in your data and automatically apply those. But if you're more of a power user, you're also at this step welcome to come in and build your own aggregations, create your own calculated columns. So there's something for more power users here, but there's also a simple path if you're less analytically mature. And of course, the next step is defining your target. So a big part of the data preparation is, if we're predicting churn, well, what does churn look like in my data? And we have a very simple interface to define churn, but it's also very flexible. Something you'll notice about all this data preparation step is we're not prescribing any particular schema or format that your data needs to be in. You bring in whichever data you think is relevant, and we guide you through the process of building a valid ABT that we can then use downstream for modeling. And so with that quick overview, I want to get into a real use case and get into the software a bit. So I'm going to act like I work at SAS Bank, I work in the credit area, and I'm a marketer. And kind of the challenge that we have right now is we have this new gold credit card, and we're noticing a lot of churn on that card over the past year. And so what I'm going to do as a marketing persona is I'm going to go into the software and actually create a churn prediction model. So I'll be able to identify which of my gold card customers are likely to churn in the next 3 months. And then I'll build an audience, a CI360 audience with the outputs of that model. And then I'll target that or activate my model in a retention journey in CI360. So I'm going to go out and we can get into the software and look at this live. So as you can see, for those familiar with CI360, we are in the solution right now. We're in the marketing AI section here, and I'm going to start with recipes. So recipes, again, are kind of where everything begins in marketing AI. If I were to create a recipe from scratch right now, I would first start by choosing a template. And so again, these are provided out of the box, and they're meant to guide you through the end-to-end experience to solve for a particular use case. You can see a couple of the options here. But I have a data admin or a data guy who's already done this for me, so let's just review one that we've already created. So you can see we've set up one called likelihood to churn off of credit card. If I scroll down in the bottom, you can see what data sources were used, our customer, activity, transaction details, tables. We've already defined what churn looks like in our data. So if it's our account status is dormant or inactive, or we haven't made a payment in the last 6 months, we're going to count that as churn. If I scroll up, we see this table section, and this is very interesting. Recipes are a little bit flexible. They can solve for a number of similar use cases while only having to do data preparation once. So again, our recipe is called likelihood to churn off of credit card. But as you can see in these tables, we have all these variations. So I could predict who's likely to churn in the next 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, and I could predict churn for my gold, bronze, or silver credit card. So again, my data person has only gone through this recipe data preparation process once, but it supports a whole family of similar use cases, which we think will be a great accelerator for our customers. But this recipe is already active, so I can go ahead and create a project off of it. And so again, projects are where we're gonna actually train the model by applying some business logic, go through an automatic training pipeline, and then tell us how we wanna activate and govern that model as well. You can see we have some projects already set up here, but I'm gonna go ahead and create a new one. So I'm gonna select new project. Again, projects are built off of recipes because the data preparation work will already be done if we have an active recipe. So I'll go ahead and grab the likelihood to churn off of credit card, click OK, and I'm brought into this wizard, which again is this use case driven step-by-step flow to solve for my given use case. I'll start by giving it a name, which is, I'll just call it gold credit card churn. And I'll answer some basic questions. So what time frame do I want to predict churn on? I'll say the next 3 months. And then what do I want to predict churn for? And I'm going to predict for my gold credit card. Something I should note here is we saw this 3 months in gold. This was configured by my data person over in recipes, but this is flexible so that you could configure a recipe to predict churn on any time frame you want, or for any product or product category, product grouping, whatever you'd like. It's very flexible. And I'm gonna move on now to the next step. So next I'm asked to select an optimization. So what I can do here is we provide a variety of out-of-the-box methods to optimize your model for different performance characteristics or business objectives. So I could say I wanna maximize for profitability or revenue, or I wanna maximize my model to be really accurate, very precise. And you'll notice this gets a little bit data science-y. We're seeing words like F1 score and recall and all of that, which is certainly gonna be overwhelming to more of a business-minded user. So what we've done is we've put very friendly labels on top of these metrics to help you understand what they mean and what the implications of choosing that metric would look like. For example, I'll go ahead and select recall, which means optimizing to find customers before they leave. And you can see that our solution is providing these very friendly descriptions of why would I want to choose this optimization method? Well, it's telling us it's good as catching as many potential churners as possible. It looks like the trade-off is I'm going to capture some people, some false flags, some people who aren't going to actually churn. We'll call them churners if we choose this optimization, but it's still a good approach for marketing. So I'll move on, and the third step is training, and it's pretty simple. All you do is click start training, make sure your project is saved first, but we have this automatic training pipeline, and you can kind of see what's going on here. We're going to simulate this just for the sake of time, but if I can actually peek under the hood and show you all a little bit more about what's actually happening. So what we do is we refresh the data, make sure you have fresh training data, validation data, all of that good stuff, and then we go through a model tournament. So we evaluate a series of different algorithms and figure out which one works the best with your data for your given use case. Whichever model is the most performant towards our goals, we select that as the champion, and then we generate some results that we'll present back in the UI, and then we would also use that model for predictions in the future as well. So I'll close out, our training is done, and we are looking at the results now. The first thing that you'll see is the selected threshold or cutoff for the model. So we've seen that we've optimized the model. The cutoff is 28, so what that means a customer will be scored at their churn risk between 0 and 100. Anyone who's above 28, we're gonna say they're a churner. Anyone below, they're not gonna be a churner. I could adjust this manually if I had business reasons or whatever to do so, but I'm just gonna accept the recommended cutoff for now. If I scroll down, I get some summary insights into my training run, so I can get a sense of how much data, how many customers were involved in the training data, what was the historical churn rate. We have some automatic validations to give you a signal of if your model looks good or not. Obviously, that's somewhat subjective, use case specific, but we try to get some basic checks in there on your behalf. If I scroll down, I can look into the model performance. And again, these metrics can get very data sciencey, a little bit jargony, but what we've tried to do is we spend a lot of time putting use case or contextually relevant descriptions of these metrics so that for a business user, you can start to interpret these and get a sense of whether you're happy with this model and want to activate it. You can also see that we're using Copilot and generative AI So what we've done is we've given the model a lot of context around the use case, what type of data might have been involved, what the customer's goal or objective was. And we have this very plain, simple, concise summary of your model's performance and how it's performing towards your goals. And we think this explainability is going to be really helpful for our users. If I can continue to scroll down, we can see things like feature importance, so which attributes contribute most significantly or positively or negatively towards a customer churning. We can look into the overfit, so making sure our model will generalize well to new data. We can look at the historical churn rate for Gold credit card customers in our underlying training data. And then of course, to have responsible, trustworthy models, we also report on fairness as well. So you can flag different attributes and ensure they're not introducing bias into your model. So what you'd also be able to do here, if you notice that a certain feature like income looks like it's introducing a ton of bias, we have very simple solutions to mitigate for bias in your model as well. Super simple experience. Another thing that I can do at this point is I can preview my model. So what we do here is we grab some random customers from your data and we generate live predictions on whether they're going to churn or not. And this just validates that your model is performing as expected. And I can also click into an individual customer and I get this local explainability, which is super important. And in some parts of the world, it's actually required to have local explainability as part of regulations. But this tells me exactly how each feature or predictor in my model is contributing to our overall prediction of them churning or not churning, which is very nice to have. So I've reviewed my training results, and let's say we're on the happy path, of course, it's a demo. I'm happy with the results. I want to activate this model for my use case. These next series of steps are all about how we activate it, and we've tried to make it very simple. The first step is eligibility. So when I predict who my Gold credit card churners are going to be, I'm going to send them off to an audience. Well, I can refine at this point who should be in that audience. And because I'm doing a retention campaign, I'm only worrying about people who I think are going to churn. So I can very easily just exclude all of the non-churners from the output by dragging it over to that 28 cutoff that we have. I can also write some inclusion or exclusion criteria to determine who should be in the output. So say I'm only running this campaign in Florida, for example, so I could refine on that very easily. The next step is setting a schedule. This can be API driven, so we don't have to orchestrate when this model runs. You could just call an API, or you could set a schedule here and it'll run either on a one-off or recurring schedule. So I'm just gonna have it run weekly for this example. Next step is output. So where do you want to send your results or your predictions? So I can add an output. You can select multiple. You'll see we have two native outputs or destinations available, which are 360 audiences and then marketing decisioning. But we'll also support a variety of databases, other MarTech vendors. The real idea with this is you should be able to send your results wherever you want, and we want to make that very simple. But I'm going to select an audience for now. You'll see with the audience, we're automatically including the ID, churn score, and churn label. But we also have some other attributes available that we can send along with the audience. And this makes it really easy to add the personalization and targeting attributes that you need for downstream campaigns. So I'll grab a couple here. Customer type, first name, last name, and email. So I'll give this audience a name, Gold churners. I'll make some other simple configurations, and we are good to go here. So I've added this audience, and then the last step before I activate my project is to configure how I want to monitor it. So this is really important to doing analytics in a responsible way. You want to model the performance of your model, the fairness of your model over time. Again, this could be a little bit complicated, so what we offer out of the box is that based off your configurations, your objective, and what recipe type you're working with, we'll automatically recommend to you like what the best practice is for monitoring. So in just one click, you can apply these recommendations, or if you want, you can come in and choose specific metrics or attributes that you want to monitor for. So I could add another one here very easily. And it's actually, this might look a little overwhelming, it's actually pretty simple how monitoring works. For example, with accuracy, we're at 87% right now. We set the threshold at 82. All that means is that if our model's accuracy dips below 82, that's going to set off an alert, and we'll retrain the model to get it back within acceptable thresholds. We can do similar things for fairness, for predictive and performance bias as well. But with that, I'm gonna go ahead and activate my model. And so our project is active now. It'll be predicting who's likely to churn on the schedule that we've specified. It'll be sending those churners as an audience into CI360. And then so I wanna just take this a quick step further. I've set up a journey in CI360 as well, this retention journey. It's a pretty simple one. We're just using emails, but you can see that we have this gold churners audience that I already dropped in here. And you can see we have our churn score, ID, churn label, and all those personalization and targeting attributes that I configured in Marketing AI. It's available right here. And so I've included that in a journey, and I've built this pretty straightforward retention journey. And I think something interesting to highlight here is you see this split node, and I'm splitting based off their churn score and also customer type. So I'm giving them a different experience based off how likely they are to churn. So I said high customers, I think I set that as churn score above 80. So we can easily split on the churn score and other attributes that we brought over from Marketing AI. I want to jump back and quickly show one other view in my project. So over time, as my project's running, I have this nice performance dashboard and insights. So you can see for the metrics that we're monitoring for, you can see the performance of them over time, which way they're trending. I also get this nice visualization of the trend again against the threshold. You can see it for all the different metrics here on different time frames. And we keep track of all of this for you in a very simple report and dashboard. And I can also quickly show you for scoring insights. So every time we run this on our schedule, it tells you how many people did we score, what was the breakdown of predicted churners versus non-churners. I can even look into the distribution here, and I can pull up any previous scoring one that I'd like. And I think this graph is really interesting here, where we actually keep track of, we saw this in training results, the historical churn rate, like observed in the data, and we can overlay this with what we predicted would happen. So hopefully, if you have a good model, it'll be trending down if you have an effective retention campaign. Yeah, that's the overview of Marketing AI. I want to just switch back to wrap up. Didn't need the backup video, thankfully. But yeah, so I have this 6 ways we can help you reach better outcomes with Marketing AI, but I think really if I bring it back to the title of this presentation, which is Experience the Disruption, what I really hope you take away from this and saw today is that this is a solution where we're really reimagining how you do analytics in AI. And we've developed an experience that is completely tailored to marketers. We're using all sorts of cool things like generative AI and templates, and behind the scenes we're using a lot of really powerful SaaS IP and technology. And so we're very excited about this. I think I have time for maybe a couple questions if there are any, but if not, feel free to shoot me an email or come find me at the Customer Intelligence booth. I'd be happy to talk more about this. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Mac. If there are any questions in the crowd, please raise your hand and I will bring the microphone over and we can answer those really quickly. All right, we got one. You guys first. You'll be right after. Was you? Yeah, perfect.
Thank you. Model training can get really expensive, so how do you enable the marketer to kind of manage the training on the model and how much time or investment you spend?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. We can do that in a couple of ways. We try to be a little bit intelligent behind the scenes. The way our deployment works is we can reserve like a specific amount of compute, so the organization's always going to be aware of that. We can also do things like if you have super high volumes of data coming in, we can actually downsample what we use for training as well to help limit costs. But really the main thing is we need to be very transparent with customers about how much resources a given training run is going to use. Really just depends on your scale and how much you want to allocate to that. Yeah.
Over here.
Thanks. This is a really exciting product. My question is, in your example, you have a credit card and gold level membership, and then there's silver and other levels to it.
Yeah.
If you wanted to model on each one of those levels, would you create a new sort of pipeline for each one of them, or can you do that all within one so that the output is creating model scores for gold, silver, bronze?
So the current way it works is you'd have a recipe which could support all those variations, and you build projects for each one. So one project is really just for one model, just to keep things organized and simple. But there are also other ways you could set up the recipe. You could set it up like a level higher, so you just have one model predicting for all three, if you're interested in that as well.
So much. If there are any more questions, we have time for maybe one more real quick one. All right, well, otherwise, give it back up for Matt.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. An amazing presentation.